in 2002, you was moved in a 7-team trade from Chicago to Indy, where I know Ron Artest. Obviously, I know you from St. John's in New York because I was playing for the Jets back then, and we used to run into each other all the time. But
Yeah.
as a player, I remember Indy. Now, all of a sudden, you with Reggie Miller, Hall of Famer, and you with Jermaine O'Neal. What was that experience like moving with a 7-player deal, Keyshawn? They had to give up 7 players to grab Artest.
It was weird when they gave up some of the players. I was like, man, I knew I was working on my game, and I knew like what people didn't see was I was locking a lot of people up rookie year, right? So I think that's what Donnie saw. But the offense, you couldn't really see it, and I was like, wow. But I knew I was effective. And when I got on that team, we wasn't even in the playoffs at that time. I got in the starting lineup. I contributed to the team. Reggie was happy. Jermaine was happy, and we went to the playoffs. We had to win 5 in a row, but we went to the playoffs at end of the season and almost beat the Nets. They went to the championship. So I was like, man, I'm starting to make an impact. But playing with Reggie was incredible. He getting there 3 hours early before games. First one there.
Yeah.
Every game.
So could this year's Indiana Pacer team, could they compete with y'all team of 04?
I gotta be a little political about that.
But no, you don't.
Nah,
it's
all
either
facts,
yes
no
or
breaks,
no.
man. Come on.
Yeah, you ain't gotta be political because we gonna slide you on Halliburton, and then everybody else we can figure it out.
Hey, that team was one of the great teams. I can't see a lot of teams in the NBA beating that team. I know one would argue, but when you got me and Stat on the wings and Jermaine at the bottom and Tinsley, Reggie Miller, we all could shoot and everybody playing defense. There's not one person on that squad not playing defense and everybody could score. So that would be really difficult. And you got me at 260 on the perimeter. You're not even dealing with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna put you on Halliburton though. I'm gonna put you out there with Halliburton and let you because that's really, for them, Siakam is there, but Halliburton really is the guy. I gotta have my best defender on their best guy that could guard 5 different positions. You can guard 5 4 spots if you needed to.
At that time, I could guard 1 through 5, 100%. I've guarded Iverson. I've guarded Shaq like once, maybe for like 2 quarters or maybe one time for a game, but Shaq is one of those guys that's just too big.
Yeah, he's just too big for everybody. So, it's almost 20
years. Who do you think your
years.
hardest person to guard was?
I say Rip Hamilton. Obviously, Kobe and those guys, but Rip Hamilton always stand out because Rip is making you run. So with Rip, he gonna test how tough you are, inside. You gotta chase him, and you're gonna be exhausted. And that was one of my toughest covers for sure.
Yeah, I'm running the Rip all the time. So Metta, it's almost 20 years to the day of the whole Malice in the Palace situation that took place, and I'm sure you talked about this 1,001 times.
Yeah.
$5 million in fines for people.
More.
What did you or more? More, yeah, or more. What did you learn from this situation, and when did you realize, this is getting ready to turn into something more than what it is?
I learned there's a lot of lessons from that, from that event. One, if somebody hits you first, you can't react. That was the biggest lesson.
I see, Metta, I get it, but I've always been one, and I say this all the time. Don't put your fucking hands on me and we good. You can cuss me, you can dog cuss me, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Don't physically approach me and we good. We can good. Don't throw no objects at me. And I get it, but go ahead, man.
That was the biggest lesson from that. Like, somebody can hit you, right? Whatever ethnicity. In this situation, it was a white attacker out of the stands against a black victim on the scorer's table in my cage, in my atmosphere, and then somebody came into our atmosphere, and that's legal. You can do that. The other thing I learned was we were thugs, so, and it's amazing how they work that out, because when you look at the situations of urban community, they are set it up for failure. Not everybody, but it's set up to fail. But then they call you a thug when you grow up in that environment, and then they poke the bear. You a thug. You a thug. Yeah, because our parents are in prison. There's things happening in the neighborhood. We're growing up around this. Obviously, we got traits. It ain't like we grew up with salad and a fork and we have those traits, right? So I learned that. And then the other thing I learned was it's definitely not worth your career. At that point in time, if you kind of did some type of forecasting where my career would have gone, even that next year, Indy, even without the suspension, that's another All-Star, guaranteed. I should have started the year in the All-Star game before that. We was the best team in the league, but Vince took the spot. But at that season, I was locking up those small forwards. So that next season was going to be another defensive player of the year. It was going to be some more accolades to tack on. But then, when you get traded, it's not your team anymore. You got to confide, then you get your rhythm, but it's not the same as if it was your team, right? Yeah. So I feel like, that I would tell anybody, it's not worth your legacy. Luckily, I still do some things. I got Defensive Player of the Year award. Some people would say I'm not a Hall of Famer, but a lot of players say I am, which is the most important. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was a lot of lessons to be learned. And then now me and the guy who threw the bear, that's my guy. We're friends. He's from Detroit. So now
that's crazy.
Yeah, that's my dude. Like, because I always tell people, since when do people get involved in a man and a man's problem? One man hit another man, and then another man addressed it. Now I got all these beta males and beta women throwing an opinion. Like, let this man and this man handle their business, and that's my guy to this day. Sort of. We're friends. He's kind of a wild card.
Yeah.
If it happened today, what do you think would be the impact? With social media and all that now, what do you think's happening? Because
it has happened. It happened, but you saw the issue with Russell Westbrook. It has happened.
Yeah. It hadn't escalated to physicality for the most part. I mean, it's Yeah. But see, I don't know, man. I grew up like you, Ortez. I just grew up on the West Coast of South Central LA. And I grew up a certain way. I done been shot twice. So my mentality, what I'm saying? My mother was on welfare. We slept in the car as an 11-year-old kid. I understand drugs. I understand all that. So my mentality is I get the league and I get with the commissioner and I get certain things. But my whole mentality is don't put your fucking hands on me. Just don't touch me. Don't do that. You can cuss me. You can call me all sorts of things. Don't touch me though, because I ain't in your space like that.
Yeah, so we're not in your space.
Yeah, I get it. I understand it, the way it looks, but you shouldn't be crucified in your career. You shouldn't, and it's just my opinion. You shouldn't have been crucified and made to look crazy and all that sort of shit. No, you shouldn't have. Because if they don't understand your mentality and where you come from and how you was raised and what you seen growing up, then there's nowhere in the world. You understand what I'm saying? They should be labeling you that way, but that's society in which we lived in and grew up in. We see things different than the most people. I don't care if it's two black men, two white men, a white man, a black man. You got to know who this individual is before you start labeling them something and trying to hurt them to the detriment of who they are in their careers. It just, I'll never be somebody that side with that.
And it's interesting because even like some of our colleagues, whether it was coaches or players, publicly calling me a thug, and it's like we're so far from that now. Yeah, we understand what that means, and then you'll see some of them going through the same things that we've gone through, and they never really addressed like, what was that thug statement about? Can you explain that to me? I'm an architect major, like, I was a major. What you talking about? I went back to school for coding when I retired, and law, and Series 7. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? So it's just something, and this is where I like to inspire people. Just because you grow up a certain way, it doesn't mean you cannot become a scholar. Don't let people say, "Oh, you're this and you're that. You're a dumb jock." Now, don't get distracted. You can become a scholar. You can become an academic and still be you.
We absolutely hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more from us, hit that subscribe button for all videos, full episodes, and exclusive content from the show. And don't forget, to find All Facts, No Breaks on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.